think it's one of those stories that it's one of the very first ones we learn growing up. And, we grow up with it, we hear it all the time, and it's really easy for it to become kind of like, Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty, just like another story, almost like a fairy tale. But when we go back and really, look into and study this story, I mean, it's striking just how beautiful and also how tragic it really is. And so that's kind of like, what we're trying to do tonight is go back to the story of creation and the fall and rediscover, the beauty and the tragedy and the promise that comes with it, because it really does teach us a lot about our Heavenly Father. Okay, so, we believe, and, the Bible teaches us that God has no beginning and there is no end. He's always been here and He always, will be. And He created the earth. But one of the things that I think is really cool about what the church teaches us is that, like where it says the first day or the second day, that's not like a literal interpretation. It's not like a literal account of the story of creation. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't read Genesis as a specific down to the letter, this is an exact account of the story of creation. It's really like a poetic, story of how it happened. And so, where it says like, the first day, each day represents, a stage of creation. So, God first created the earth, and then He created, the land and the sea, and the light and the darkness, and the day and the night. And then He created, the vegetation and the earth, or the animals. But then, He created man and woman. And what this shows us is that God is a God of order and not chaos. Now, there was a point to every stage of creation. And if you look at it, it builds and it builds and it builds up to like the epitome of creation. That's man and woman. And so, a lot of times nowadays there's like this big controversy. What about evolution? Where did we come from anyway? And I think what's so important for us to remember is that we as men and women are created in the image and likeness of God. And there is beauty and dignity in every human person. And what's more is that God has given each of us a soul. And if you think about that, that's something that, God created to either go, to heaven, to be with Him forever, or, to hell. Unfortunately, He didn't create it for that. That can be a consequence of our actions. But that's something that cannot evolve. Our souls were created by God.
It's good.
So if you look in, the book of Genesis, at first, everything was perfect in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve had everything they could ever even, imagine that they would need. God provided for them so perfectly. And, He gave them just this simple commandment. You can eat out of any of these trees, any of these bushes. And can you imagine how many that is? I mean, that must have been like a billion. But He told them, you cannot eat off of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was it. Well, you know how it is. When someone tells you, don't do this, what is it? All of a sudden that looks, really, sometimes it looks like really intriguing. We're like, ooh, what will happen if I do this? When I think about that, I think of like the little kid at Christmas who, his mom tells him, don't look in that box underneath the tree because there's a surprise. And then within 5 minutes, it's all he can think of. And, I think that's probably the way it was for Eve, when she saw that apple. I think that this devil is so, clever. He's not stupid, y'all. He knows exactly how to get us. We joke and go, whoa, like that. But, honestly, he knows where our weaknesses are, and He knows where to get it. And, Eve, we all know, she gave that apple to Adam, and she ate it, and he ate it, and they messed up, and they disobeyed God. And, in the Bible, it says that then after they did that, then it says, then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked. And so, I don't know about y'all, but when I first read that, I was like, does that mean that, like, before that, they were, like, all, naive and stupid, and they were like, la, 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 la. And then after that, all of a sudden they had this impartial wisdom, and, they knew all that. Well, no, actually, before the fall, they did not have any mark of sin. You know, they saw each other so purely, and they were in this perfect relationship, you know, with God and with each other. But you know, after the fall, when they disobeyed God, original sin came into the world, and that it was like this veil kind of dropped, and they no longer had that ability to be in that perfect relationship with each other and with God because of that sin, because of that choice. But what I want to invite you guys to do now is to think about a time when you disobeyed, say, your parents. Maybe you stayed out past your curfew, or maybe you took the car, when you weren't supposed to, you didn't ask, or maybe you watched that movie that you were told do not watch it, and I don't know, maybe at the time it was like, my parents are so old. How are they ever going to know what I'm going through? I can make my own decisions. But when your parents found out, I'm sure that it really hurt them. And it hurt them that you chose to not trust them, not trust their judgment. And, I don't know, if you're like me, you probably felt really ashamed or hurt that you broke that trust. But here's the thing. When we mess up, do our parents ever completely stop loving us and say, you're out? Most of the time, unless in extreme circumstances, I don't think of any time, that happens. Our parents love us so much. And even though it hurts them tremendously, when we choose to disobey them, I promise, when they give us those consequences for those actions, it's for our own good, and it's out of love for us. And God is the same way, only He's in a much more perfect way. When Adam and Eve sinned and they ate that apple, it hurt God so much because He had provided for His children and they chose to not follow that. But the thing was is that He did not just cut it off there. Even though He gave them consequences like having to work or having those pains at childbirth, He still loved them. And if you read on in the story, you can see He does continue to provide for them and give them blessings. And He does the same for us. Just when we when we mess up or when we make bad decisions in life, He doesn't just cut it all off there. He keeps on loving us. And so that's really the heart of the message that I want to give you guys today, is that when we read the story of Adam and Eve, even though they messed up, God still loved them. What's more is that He sent a Savior to redeem us and to redeem those decisions. And so that's just my talk for tonight. I really want to encourage you guys in the next week to go back and reread, this story for your own selves and ask God, to open up your heart and to touch those areas that maybe you need a little extra love. So thank you very much.